His whole college campus tour was about asking questions. And now Turning Point is sending out legal letters to small YouTube channels accusing them of defamation for asking questions. Turning Point states in the letter, Turning Point entities are not looking for litigation, rather their interest is in the truth and making sure the public record is accurate. So they are claiming they do not want to sue me.
Remember this guy? Yeah, the one from the Wolves in Finance show. He's the guy who's been digging deep into what looks like serious financial weirdness happening inside TPUSA and a bunch of their connected companies. He's been breaking things down on his podcast and on social media, revealing money trails that raise a lot of eyebrows. Before that, he also talked about questionable stuff linked to Tim Walz, pointing out details that had a lot of people talking. Now his latest findings are even wilder. He's claiming that millions of dollars were reportedly being moved through a UPS mailbox located in a strip mall. Like, seriously? They're allegedly using it as some sort of address for major transactions and trying to make it seem totally normal. Apparently, Charlie caught wind of all this and ordered a full-scale internal audit inside TPUSA to find out what was really going on. And then, just over a week later, something tragic happened. He lost his life under unclear circumstances. The timing shocked everyone. Now, here's where it gets intense. TPUSA allegedly tried to silence this finance investigator by sending him a legal letter hoping to intimidate him. But instead of backing off, he exposed that too. Some even say the people behind the scenes aren't really calling the shots, that they're just the public faces of something much bigger. She's the face of it all, but let's be real. The person truly in charge doesn't step out in a glittery outfit shooting off fireworks just moments after her husband's tragic passing. That kind of performance only happens when there's something much deeper going on behind the scenes.
But I view this letter as a threat to sue, and I think any reasonable business person would do the same. A cease and desist letter is the first step towards a defamation lawsuit. I interpret this letter as Turning Point telling me to shut my mouth or they're going to sue me. I do not understand what Kirk is doing. Out of the hundreds of people posting on social media about out of the hundreds of people posting on social media about Turning Point, why are they targeting me?
People are saying the reason all of this chaos erupted is because someone got too close to the truth, because he was uncovering something major. Those mysterious P.O. boxes and hidden transactions weren't small details. They were massive red flags. It's like watching a show where the distractions keep coming while the real story hides in plain sight. And when you look at who's been involved, it's hard not to notice some faces that just don't look trustworthy, like something's just off. Still, instead of clearing things up, they double down and make it even messier. Then came the most unbelievable part. Reports say the team allowed drone flights for flashy B-roll media coverage, but not for actual security surveillance. How does that make any sense? Supposedly, this was a security policy, but according to the official statement from Turning Point's lawyer, that's how it was explained. Even the finance investigator couldn't believe it. He said if that's really true, then it's a ridiculous decision that might have cost far more than anyone expected. And that's exactly why people are questioning what's really going on behind those polished public statements. Charlie Kirk's story took a shocking turn after December 14th. That's when a video dropped questioning financial moves connected to Turning Point and a company called 110 LLC. The host wasn't making wild accusations, he was simply asking why so much money was being sent to this contractor and whether those payments were fully legitimate. But apparently, even asking questions sparked backlash. He was told those claims were false and that he wasn't even allowed to ask about 110 LLC or Jake Kaufman, which is strange considering that company.
Why are they so worried about what I am saying that they're sending me legal letters? I am one of the smallest YouTube channels in my market segment. Who do they think I am? I'm a working accountant with a small YouTube channel. I have no money, I have no power, I have no influence. I don't know how much money they think they're gonna get from suing me. All I have is the truth. And I'm not gonna stop speaking the truth because Kirk doesn't like it. The one good thing about a lawsuit is that everything will be out in the open, and Turning Point will quickly find out that I have nothing to hide. The letter came from a lawyer named Paul Edgar Harold from South Bend, Indiana.
Reportedly receives millions from Turning Point as one of their biggest outside partners. In his words, this is supposed to be America. People should be free to ask questions about how public money flows. Turning Point's official response was that everything was completely legitimate, that 110 LLC provides marketing and advertising services, plain and simple, But here's where the situation gets messy. The listed address for that company turned out to be a UPS mailbox at a strip mall. That's right, the same mailbox where large payments were reportedly being sent. Supporters say it's just a business address, nothing shady about it. Critics, though, can't help but raise an eyebrow, calling it a strange setup for a company supposedly handling major marketing projects worth millions. After all those strange details came out, people started digging even deeper, not just into the UPS mailbox or the payments, but into the structure behind everything. Because the more people looked, the weirder it got. The names, the paperwork, the timing, nothing seemed to line up neatly, and when you looked at who was benefiting, it was hard not to notice the same small circle appearing again and again. It started with that finance investigator's report, the one highlighting millions in payments to shell-style companies tied to the same address. He didn't accuse anyone outright, he just laid out the documents, the filings, the transfers, but the pattern spoke for itself. A maze of LLCs, consulting firms, and marketing vendors, all seemingly connected through thin paper trails that led nowhere obvious. It painted a picture of a financial network that looked more like a spider web than a clean ledger. Then came the internal reaction. When Charlie reportedly ordered a full audit, it sent shockwaves through the organization. People started acting strange, deleting old files.
Bend, Indiana. It seems like this is Turning Point's lawyer. I looked him up, and I cannot find that he has been admitted to the State Bar of Arizona in order to practice law in Arizona, so I'm not exactly sure how he's going to sue me in Arizona, but maybe he's working with other lawyers. In the letter, they order me to, please confirm that you will publicly correct your false statements immediately. This is not what I was going to talk about this week, but Turning Point is demanding that I communicate their statements publicly. A whole list of statements they claim are false that I have made in my videos about Turning Point. Now, I'm not interested in spreading false information, so I'm glad that Turning Point reached out to me because if I said something wrong, I am happy to correct it. So let us go through the statements where they have a problem. And you're going to want to hear this because some of these are wild. On November 16th, I posted a video called Bombshell, Did Turning Point USA Commit Fraud? They say these are false claims. Charlie Kirk ordered a Doe-style audit that was never conducted. Here's my first problem with this letter. They do not include the actual quote that I said in the video.
Locking down drives, switching phones. Some employees quietly told associates they didn't want to be anywhere near the accounting department. Others stopped showing up altogether. It was as if everyone suddenly realized how close things were getting to being exposed. And just when the audit was supposedly getting underway, everything flipped. Charlie's sudden passing stunned the entire organization. The official line called it an unthinkable tragedy, but behind the scenes, confusion took over. His allies said he'd been under immense pressure in the weeks leading up to it. He had been asking for receipts, payment proofs, and third-party confirmations that some people clearly didn't want to provide. The timing raised every eyebrow possible. An internal audit ordered, strange money trails uncovered, then a tragedy that silenced the only person who might have forced transparency. It was almost too coincidental, and even though no one could prove wrongdoing, the optics were undeniably bad. After that, the finance investigator became public enemy number one for the people still inside. Instead of addressing the evidence, they focused on him, sending legal letters, claiming defamation, and trying to pressure him into silence. But the move backfired. The letters made the story even bigger because suddenly it looked like they were trying to shut down questions rather than answer them. He responded calmly but firmly, saying that the documents he shared were public records. If this is misinformation, he said, then you should explain which parts are false, not threaten the person who noticed. That moment changed everything.
Paraphrase statement of what I said, and they are saying that the paraphrase statement is a lie. You have to tell me exactly what I said that was supposedly a lie, and they do this through the whole letter. So my request to this lawyer, in future letters, because I'm assuming there's going to be more, please include the actual quote that I said so that I can respond to your accusation.
People realized this wasn't a conspiracy theory, it was data, actual filings, payment records, and contracts that anyone could look up. Then came the most unsettling detail, the security situation surrounding Charlie's final event. Several insiders claimed there were major lapses that day. Requests for added surveillance had reportedly been denied, drone coverage was restricted, except for a camera crew shooting promo footage. The explanation was that security wasn't authorized to use drones, but media was. Nobody could make sense of that. Why allow one and not the other when the stakes were that high? The investigator called that absurd and saying that if the company truly valued security, they'd prioritize it over publicity every single time. He wasn't the only one who thought so either. Even some staff members later admitted privately that the whole setup didn't feel right. And after Charlie's passing, things got even murkier. The internal audit he ordered reportedly disappeared. Some said it was paused out of respect. Others whispered that certain files had already been wiped clean. But within weeks, talk about the audit was completely shut down. Everyone inside was told to stay focused on the mission. The only problem? Nobody was sure what that mission even meant anymore. Meanwhile, the organization went into full public relations mode. Tributes, memorials, emotional statements, and dramatic speeches about unity and continuing his legacy. But behind all the emotion, critics noticed a new leadership structure quietly sliding into place. People with close business ties to the same outside companies were suddenly promoted. Projects linked to the questioned LLCs kept running as if nothing had happened. It was business as usual. Maybe too usual. And that's when the online community started connecting dots again. Independent researchers, small YouTubers, and citizen journalists began comparing financial filings, campaign records, and donor disclosures. The overlaps were wild. Similar names appearing in different entities, all seemingly routed through those same addresses, including that infamous strip mall mailbox. Then came the silence, pages disappearing.
But I'm going to at least try to interpret what they are saying. I spoke in my video about a memo that Charlie Kirk wrote 8 days before he was murdered. In the cease and desist letter, they say, indeed, Turning Point USA's COO announcement concerning the Doge effort never used the word audit. So this is breaking news. Turning Point's attorney has now confirmed that the Charlie Kirk memo is authentic. Now have legal confirmation this did happen. It seems like their problem with my video is that I called it a Doge audit, when in the memo it is written as Doge effort. So they want everyone to use the word effort and not use the word audit. This letter is seriously hurting my head.
Statements edited, and sudden policy changes around financial transparency. For many observers, it looked like the cleanup operation had begun. Not an official one, but a digital one. Scrubbing the traces left behind before too many people noticed. The finance investigator, meanwhile, refused to back down. He kept posting updates, screenshots, and summaries of what was still publicly available. And every time he did, the story grew. People wanted answers, not rumors, just simple clarity. Where was the money really going? Why did so many contractors use the same location? And why did an internal audit lead to chaos instead of confidence? Of course, defenders of the organization insisted there was nothing sinister happening. They said this was just an example of how political nonprofits operate: complex, fast-moving, and heavily outsourced. They claimed every dollar was properly accounted for and that the critics were twisting things for clicks. But that explanation didn't satisfy the growing number of people who saw the inconsistencies for themselves. What made the whole thing even harder to ignore was how quickly the topic got buried. Algorithms stopped recommending videos, posts vanished from timelines, and yet people kept sharing copies, reposting clips, and pushing the discussion back into circulation. It became one of those internet mysteries that just refused to die. Even months later, the questions still lingered, unanswered, uncomfortable, and deeply suspicious. How could a multi-million-dollar organization operate out of a mailbox and call it normal business practice? Why did its own founder order an audit only for everything to unravel right after? And who exactly benefited from keeping it all quiet? At this point, the story had moved beyond simple political drama. It had become something bigger, a case study in how power, money, and secrecy collide in modern organizations. And for the people who'd followed it from the beginning, there was no forgetting what they'd seen. Because once you've looked at those filings and followed those addresses, you can't unsee how messy it all looks. The unanswered questions keep echoing louder than any official statement ever could.
But we cannot use the word audit. We have to call it an effort, or they are going to sue you. The letter goes on to say, the announcement makes clear that Turning Point USA was doing what it has always pledged to donors, ensuring it was being efficient with its funds and time and making changes to foster greater efficiencies. Moreover, Turning Point USA hires a third-party audit firm to conduct an audit every year. This is all just their opinion. This is how they are interpreting Charlie Kirk's memo. They think that Charlie Kirk wrote this memo, and they think it means that they do not have to do anything. How convenient. They think that Charlie Kirk wrote a memo just to tell people to keep doing business as usual.
And no matter how much they try to move on, people are still watching, still wondering what really happened behind the curtain. As more information started surfacing, the entire situation around TPUSA began to feel like a slow-motion storm. Every new document, every financial filing that popped up only raised more questions about how everything really operated behind the scenes. The more people looked, the more complicated it became. And that complexity didn't make the story go away. It made it even louder. The finance investigator wasn't done either. He kept posting quiet updates, each one more revealing than the last. Screenshots of filings, corporate records, public statements that didn't match the paperwork. It was like piecing together a puzzle that someone clearly didn't want solved. He was calm, factual, but firm. No wild claims, no baseless talk, just numbers, names, and timelines. And the numbers weren't small. They were massive. It became impossible to ignore the strange coincidences, multiple companies with similar names tied to the same address, vendors receiving 6- and 7-figure payments for vague consulting and creative work. Each time something looked odd, the organization's spokespeople brushed it off as standard practice, but people who actually work in finance were calling it sloppy, inconsistent, and possibly reckless. And then came the silence from the inside. A few whistleblowers who had once shared hints on social media suddenly stopped posting altogether. Some of their accounts even disappeared. Others began walking back what they had said before, suddenly calling everything a misunderstanding. It all felt forced, like a coordinated retreat. Viewers watching this unfold could tell that pressure was being applied somewhere behind closed doors. The investigator, meanwhile, stood his ground. He said he had already received friendly warnings to stop digging, but he wasn't backing off. If you can't handle questions, he said, that's usually a sign there's something worth asking about. That one line went viral, turning him into a kind of symbol for transparency. People began following him just to see what he'd find next. Then the strangest twist happened. Out of nowhere, certain media outlets
was that Charlie Kirk's memo meant something different. This is not a statement of fact, it is an opinion. This is another problem I have with this letter. Most of the statements they mention are opinions, just like this one. If you are going to accuse me of defamatory statements, they need to be facts, not opinions. If I have a fact wrong, let me know and I will happily correct it. But I will not change my opinion of this memo to whatever you want. But since it is so important for Turning Point, I have no problem with specifying that Charlie Kirk's memo used the words Doge effort, not Doge audit. The next statement is, someone at Turning Point decided not to file 990 forms. At the time I made that video, those forms were not publicly posted. Those forms were posted after I made that video, and I've already made a correction about that.
Began publishing short pieces defending the organization, all using nearly identical wording. They described the allegations as conspiracy theories and called the audit story a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. But here's the catch. The same wording appeared across multiple articles in different outlets within hours of each other. It didn't take long for viewers to realize it was coordinated PR. The backlash was instant. Instead of shutting down the controversy, the synchronized defense made it look worse. People started posting side-by-side screenshots of the identical headlines, captioning them with phrases like, when damage control turns into confirmation. It became a trending topic overnight. Behind all that noise, what truly hit people was the timeline. The audit ordered, the investigation started, the legal threats sent out, and then the sudden tragedy involving Charlie. The pattern looked too neat to be random. Even those who weren't into political drama started paying attention. Something just didn't add up. And that's when the conversation took another wild turn. New reports surfaced claiming that the organization's security expenses had skyrocketed in the months before Charlie's passing, including payments to private firms with no online footprint. The amounts were huge, but no clear descriptions were attached to them. When asked for comment, the response was short. We do not discuss internal security matters. That only fueled more speculation. Still, through all the confusion, the central point stayed the same. This wasn't about gossip or outrage, it was about accountability. People just wanted to know where the money was going, why there were so many LLCs, and why transparency suddenly vanished after the one person who demanded answers was gone. Even months later, every time new financial documents got released, sharp-eyed users online would dig through them like detectives, comparing them to old records. They kept finding subtle changes, new entities popping up, old ones closing, addresses shifting. To outsiders, it might look like normal business reshuffling, but to the people following this saga, it felt like someone trying to rewrite the paper trail in real time.
The next statement is, in 2023, $650,000 may have been funneled from Turning Point USA through Turning Point Action to Turning Point PAC to evade campaign finance restrictions. They are referencing this chart from my video. They claim money actually went from Turning Point Action to Turning Point USA as a reimbursement for event expense. There was nothing nefarious about that transfer. I'm not sure they are contradicting what I am saying. According to their own statement, Turning Point USA used their own donor funds to pay for an event on behalf of Turning Point Action, freeing up Turning Point Action funds, which they then transferred to Turning Point PAC.
And yet, even with all those moves, the energy around the topic never died. The more they tried to control the story, the more people cared. Livestream hosts, TikTok commentators, and even financial analysts began referencing it in their own content. It became one of those rare internet stories that crossed from the gossip world into serious investigative talk. Meanwhile, the organization kept moving forward publicly as if nothing happened, launching new events, celebrating milestones, and keeping the same polished image. But audiences could feel that something something underneath had shifted. The confidence was gone. Every statement now sounded rehearsed, defensive, like they were still haunted by questions no one had answered. The legacy of what happened wasn't just about money or controversy, it was about control. Who had it, who lost it, and what it cost. Charlie's name was still being honored in speeches and posts, but the truth was, people couldn't stop wondering what he knew and what he might have found if he'd lived long enough to finish that audit. And even if the official story never changes, one thing is clear. The public isn't forgetting. Because when you build an empire on influence and power, every secret you hide eventually leaves a trail. And once that trail is found, there's no putting it back in the dark. At this point, everything looks suspicious. The documents, the payments, the P.O. box setup, it all feels way too messy to be brushed off as coincidence. The investigator didn't call it fraud outright, but when you see money routed through a random mailbox and labeled as marketing, it's hard not to raise an eyebrow. Something about it just doesn't sit right, and the timing makes it even more questionable. After he exposed that, things heated up fast. The organization, armed with massive funding and high-powered lawyers, came after him hard, but instead of backing down, he doubled up on transparency. He didn't ask for sympathy, he asked for attention. He wanted people to watch, to see the pattern for themselves, and to ask the same questions he did. That's where we come in. If stories like this matter to you, if you believe truth should never be silenced, make sure to like this video, share it everywhere, subscribe for updates, and drop a comment below with your thoughts. Your voice helps keep these stories alive, and trust me, there's more to uncover. See you on the next one. This saga is far from over.